Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, June 8th Policy Committee meeting. Call to order. And can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Dr. Short, I'll be happy to serve as secretary. So let's go around the room. John Ritter's here. Who else?
Leslie McBride.
Don Hall.
Scott Williams.
Hillary Warning.
And Bill Short.
We have the sign-in sheet, so I can pass this over to Mr. Ritter.
Checking it off already.
Great. Okay, do number 2 and just...
Sure, we have
open it
some
up.
policies for discussion. That would be Policy 707, the use of school facilities and the property. So, Dr. Short, you've given us
Yes.
a packet with all of the policies under the heading of 707. There are about 6 or 7 or 8 subgroups under there.
Correct.
And so we're going to talk about some of those. So what are the major topic areas we're going to talk about? Price or security or?
Pretty much price, admission. We do have Mr. Hall here who has done some background information from other districts about certain fees that have been applied to venues. This discussion came up, I believe, at a building and grounds meeting and also at a regular board meeting. That, with the improvements to our facilities and the pending baseball and softball fields, we need to start examining our rental fee schedule.
Do we know when these were last updated?
18, this policy was last updated. I don't know if anything changed at that time.
No, that was pretty much it. Everything remained the same prior to COVID. So it's 4 years. But again, we do have the facilities improving here over the next 6 to 8 months, which does include not only the fields up at Gateway High School with the baseball and softball and potential auxiliary field, but also, in my conversations with Mr. Hall and Mr. Brown, we need to start gathering information and developing a plan for the Gateway Middle School facilities, which will include 2 brand new gyms, baseball, softball field, artificial turf, and football field, soccer field, artificial turf, along with a brand new track.
So the Gateway Middle School is undergoing massive redesign and reconstruction right now. When that's finished, it'll be a wonderful attraction to other groups who might want to use the volleyball court, the gymnasium, the track outside, the softball, baseball fields. And so we're about a year or a year and a half away from kids getting in there and the public wanting to be able to use it. So now's a really good time to ask the question, what should we do about security for the place, cleanup, maintenance, new rules, COVID masking. We still might have that a couple years from now. So there are updated fee schedules. So there are a lot of good questions that we could either ask and answer right now or put on the parking lot so that we can do some more research and ask those and get the answers later. Don, I'll turn it over to you.
Michael, I shared it with you as well as with Dr. Short. It is basically a draft of some updated fees that we would recommend. Are you able to grab that up by any chance and put it on the screen? I'm sorry.
I will in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
And Matt also suggested the athletic director be the one responsible for all the scheduling.
Well, the good news, we're in motion with that. We've had some discussions, and it was something that you had recommended to me and other folks had when we looked at the big picture. And I have a couple other thoughts.
Maybe a month and a half ago, had the initial conversation, talked to Mr. Brown as well, and looking historically, what we've done in the past, there was some movement with athletic directors during the time, either before Mr. Smith, but Mr. Holshoe, et cetera. So at that point in time, we felt for stability purposes, send it all to Bob Brown. Now that we have Dawn on board, we felt, with practices and everything else that we're able to make that transition.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense to really separate out, like, segments of it, classrooms or different things, because then you don't know right hand versus left hand, you could just have something drop through the cracks that way. So we're going to manage that scheduling all through the athletic office. One thing before we talk specific numbers, a couple thoughts. The first one is, Mr. Ritter had mentioned a bunch of different things we might want to look at. I think the guts or the bones of this document are really strong. I think our considerations in terms of what fees are charged for support, in the different facilities, security, site management, things like that, they're all good. I don't know that there's a lot that needs to be changed in any way there. I don't feel like we're, holy cow, we're lacking in this or that or the other. I think we're pretty good, and I think we've covered everything, really dotted I's and crossed T's when we put this policy together. The other thought, and it isn't done yet, and certainly something that would have to be, a Paul Schott conversation and a Dr. Short and school board conversation, is several districts that, we're in contact with, and Dr. Short mentioned that I had maybe 15 different districts, some very similar, some not as similar, that I got all their fee structure from, and had conversations with each of those athletic directors or facilities people, depending on who was responsible for it. And one of the things with those was some of those places sort of take all the money that's garnered from rental and put it in one big pot and call it their turf fund. So it's essentially it sits, and when we get 10 years down the road, and we're looking at replacing the turf, we might have $400,000 or $500,000 in a turf fund. Now, again, that's not my call, but that's something that some districts do. They put it aside and just say, let's hang on to it separately, and then when it's time, we just stroke the check.
Something we did, I'd say 20 years ago.
It was a Google Docs.
20 years ago that we were very innovative with a Gateway Football Classic. We did partner with Sports Fever Television. And at the time, the press box was brand new, the field was new, a lot of renovations to the stadium. And it was also on the cusp of television for high school football. And started seeing different events and showcases, especially the Herb Street Classic on ESPN.
Yep.
And we got together and had 2 days of games here that were very well attended, some marquee matchups, and financially did well for the district. And that money was placed into a reserve fund, specifically earmarked for the replacement of the field next cycle.
Over the field or scoreboards or what have you. And if you recall, we thought that to replace the turf would cost us $1 million again, because we didn't think about the base. And we wanted to put advertising and shift that money into that. And we thought about advertising on every step in the stadium like they do at the Penguin games. But at the time, the school board was frowned upon any on the field or off the field
They didn't
advertising.
want Coke or Pepsi on the scoreboard, they just wanted,
But yeah, that's an excellent idea that we thought about years ago, and it should be done.
So it's something that, again, the board, administration, everyone here would have to make that recommendation on. Once we, start next year off, improve facilities, high school fields, moving into the middle school complex, where are we going to designate the funds to go?
And a lot of people, again, I asked the question in the course of my discussion with the other districts, can you quantify how much money you brought in? Do you keep track, does somebody, and some of them knew to the penny because they were handling it themselves and had that sort of fund, and they could just pull it up and look at it and say, here's what we got. And for instance, Kiski area in the last 5 years has brought in upwards of $400,000. Now, I'm not too good at math, but if you go, the similar number, 10 years, the minimum lifespan of what Shaw's telling us for our turf fields. We're talking about, replacing it and doing any other improvements, without having to even touch any other money in the district. Again, if that's the way we went with it.
And the important thing also, when we go about this is to ensure that we have our custodians in play who are there overseeing, but also supervision of whatever event may be there. You know, I've had multiple phone calls, boards in the past, above ground, or if there's an event up in our sports complex, and sometimes, you know, what they put down on their initial reservation form doesn't necessarily pan out to be what happens. And, you know, when they say maybe 200-300 people showing up and it turns into 1,000 and then they're parked all over the place and the police are up here. So we need to build in, you know what I'm talking about.
Remember the time they wanted to have the fire inside?
Yes. Yes.
And we do have, again, built into, you know, what else you need in addition to a rental fee, you know, that we're going to require you to have. Obvious ones would be things like in the pool, you know, you got to supply lifeguards, at least 2. There are others that, you know, if you have an event that truly has moving parts, you know, you have officials coming in and you have multiple teams and whatnot, we need a site management person from the district to be on site. Always we're going to need custodial support. You know, we're going to need somebody to make sure the right things are open and then cleaned up, you know, after they're done and so forth. So those things are built in and add-ons at times depending on the nature of the event. Before we look at the fee schedule that's in the packet that you have in front of you, the current one that we have, you know, is 707 policy 707-R-2. You kind of need to know what we're looking at. And right at the beginning of the fee schedule, it talks about a category A, a category B, and a category C. And I will tell you that every district that we looked at has some similar version of it. It might be lettered different. It might be, you know, called by the, you know, school group, community group, non-community group, or non-school group, or something to that effect. Our A, B, and C says that category A, when you look at the chart, are people that are, you know, gateway teams. It'd be like our football team using the locker room, or our soccer team using the stadium, or our band using, you know, the parking lot or whatever, or the stadium. The second category B is a nonprofit that is community-based, and there's a little more that goes into that. It typically has to be about 75% or more that are Gateway District residents, so Monroeville or Pitcairn residents. And in order to be in that group, you need to have, it needs to be a, you know, basically Gateway kids, although it's not a Gateway group, if that makes sense. And then the next would be someone who's not affiliated with the school. A baseball tournament comes in, a soccer group, somebody wants to use the auditorium for a concert or a recital. They really don't have an affiliation. Maybe they're located in Murraysville, or maybe they're located in Plum, or maybe they're located in another part of the state, but they're having something here and they want to use our facility. So that's the categories. The changes I've marked in orange. Yellow is in the colored document that's online on our website. So you don't see that on the document you have, but the orange things are changes. In the past, and it starts right at the first thing we have is we used to charge $150 for the Gateway gym, and there was no auxiliary gym. So we changed to $175 there to match what we would charge for the sports complex gym. It's going to be really a similar quality gym and very modern, very impressive gymnasium.
Seating will remain what it was, correct?
Yes,
In the,
the old gym at TMS. Well, we call it, it'll be refurbished, but the existing gym,
exactly, so.
yeah, it's staying the same.
I'm sorry, I think were these prices changed in 2018?
I know, I don't believe they were.
So none of these prices reflect the custodial raises that have happened in the last 10 years?
Custodial was the only one in, I believe, in Group C. It went from $40 to $50 just a couple years
So this is just rental, this doesn't include.
Right, and there is an addendum or an appendix that basically says you also have to pay for this in
Okay.
addition to the rental.
Okay.
And that would be reflected there. But, so, again, to match, again, and the 175 is right in the ballpark of neighboring school districts and the others that we studied per hour, plus the support required. Again, with now another gym, we've added that and put it at 150, which again is similar to the high school number. As we, if we could scroll up, Maiko, if you're able to do that, or if you want me to do that.
10 seconds.
Okay.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
The next thing would be the stadium itself. In the past, we have not, so we would go all the way to the high school stadium. The next orange really is what we're looking for. Okay, and there's where we are. So again, some people do it where you do a 4-hour block. Other people do per hour. Other people will only rent per day. But we're again in the ballpark with most people. Previously, if you're looking at your one in front of you, we didn't allow any outside groups to rent the stadium. It just wasn't something we did. Now we're saying with the complex that we have and the requests that we get, we're basically going to charge you $250 an hour without lights for the first 4 hours and $100 each additional hour after that. If we do use lights, we're going to charge you an extra $50 an hour, still $100 additional past 4 hours. So doing some math, the first four hours would be $1,000 rental, and then you'd be talking about, $1,100, $1,200 if you went to 6, 7, 8 hours. The places that don't charge hourly charge a flat rate of $1,500 or a flat rate of $2,000 to use their stadium. So it's in the ballpark. In fact, cheaper than some. Everybody that has lights and turf charges a similar number and also charges more when they fire up the lights. So basically, that's what we decided was a fair price and a competitive price for neighboring schools and districts, and basically we have all of those. The swimming pool, we didn't have a category B number. We used to say no charge for category B, but we have a couple groups, quite frankly, that are right on the edge of whether they're really category C because they don't have as many Monroeville or Pitcairn kids as they used to, but they're headquartered in Monroeville. So they're kind of a nebulous group, and they haven't been charged anything, but at the same time, they're really a group C. So we sort of said we would find a middle ground for those folks and offer them, the B rate of $125 an hour, and then continue to charge people that were outside groups the $250 for the pool. And again, that's lower than some. The next thing would be, I'm sorry, I missed the multi-purpose field. The next thing would be our turf fields. They used to be our grass baseball and our grass softball fields was $25 an hour. And we charge sometimes per game. Well, now we're looking at, again, a comparative rate of $125 an hour with $175 for lights. And then the multi-purpose field, which, again, the 3 asterisks down below mean if we do indeed do the, Dr. Short called it the auxiliary field. I called it multi-purpose here. Whatever we call the field that would be used in the phys ed area, if we were to turf that, we don't charge anything. Obviously, we would charge a similar rate of $125 an hour to use that field as well. That, I believe, is the lion's share of the changes. And again, what we're reflecting is new facilities, an extra gym and a brand new gym at the middle school. We're looking at renting the stadium to outside groups, which can be a very lucrative deal. And again, from everybody I talked to, those prices are more than what the groups are more than willing to pay those prices there. The quotes I got were, certain this group wouldn't bat an eye. They would say that's a great rate, and they're ready to pay it. It's what they pay everybody. And then again, accounting for the turf at the middle school baseball field, that would also be $125 an hour. the soccer field, and again, I guess if we scroll up a little more to GMS, baseball and softball, maybe we had to go the other way.
No, right there.
We include,
Yeah, there we go.
and I'm just looking at,
The GMS stadium, I'm sorry, and baseball field would have new rates as well to match similar rates. A little cheaper to use the stadium, but it's turf.
yeah.
And baseball, the same thing, turf infield, 125 an hour. No lights an option
We
there.
have a concession stand over at Gateway Middle School.
Yes.
So we may want to include that in there as well.
I was gonna ask, why is the main gym and the concession stand not available at the sports complex across the board, but the main gym also not available for category B?
That's currently where, I'm sorry.
The sports complex. So the main gym says no charge for A, not available for B, and then concession stand is no charge for A and then not available for B or C. What's,
I think what happened there was at the time, if there was an event in there, the boosters would be able to run the stand to make money for their specific sports. And then if no boost, let's just say it's girls basketball, boys basketball in the gym, and if neither one of them wanted to run a stand, then whoever was renting the facility would be able to use the concession stand at one point.
But for instance, we just hosted a PIAA volleyball match over the weekend. And we put it out to our people, any of the booster groups, to open a concession stand. Again, that's a benefit of hosting.
right?
We would get, money through that. I'm actually not sure, and maybe Bob could speak to this regarding the main gym for category B. Should that be no charge or should that be not available?
Well, this was kind of old, and there was different thought processes back when this was originally done 20 years ago. They didn't
Yeah.
want it to be used by anybody but our
Yeah.
Group A people.
Right, so should we look at changing this now since
Absolutely,
we're
we should
looking at
talk
it?
about all of that.
Okay. Can we make the concession stand available to category C if it's
Well,
not to our
that's,
boosters?
that gets a little tricky. We have equipment in there, our people have food products in there. So if you have an outside group coming in to use it, we've discussed not doing this so much through the boosters, but through the district, that we would man it and run it
And-
for any group.
And a lot of times the booster groups, once they would decline the opportunity to do it,
Yeah,
it would then go to a different booster group to say if they want to go
go
in.
to every team booster group.
Because
So
cheerleaders
if
don't have.
basketball was happening and basketball boosters didn't have anybody available, they're gonna call the cheer.
The others, yeah.
And one of the nuances with category B is, there have been times where it's there are some groups that it's hard to very black and white define whether they're A or B. They might have a mix, there are some that are obvious, they're maybe Boy Scouts or one of those kind of groups, but there are others that there's a lot of gateway, maybe it's an adjunct gateway sports team playing out of season. So sometimes we have the ability to sort of massage that group into A, not charge them because we're calling them a gateway group. Or we have some barter in kind.
Like a fall ball team.
Yeah, we would say we're gonna treat you like a gateway team rather than category B, even though you're technically not a gateway team.
And some booster groups are much more active than others. The sports complex, the basketball team is one for sure, the volleyball team, they're there doing it all the time, where we don't have that in some other areas. They're just not quite as active.
And they go, or just the hot dog machine, the warmers, the sector, et cetera, whatever.
That was in response to the not
And
available
that's
for
what brought
category
it up
B, not
about
the
maybe
concession stand.
bringing it as district and running it that way.
And with the high school fields, baseball and softball, we have the refreshment stand up there.
Facility
And
and
given
Hills
the
facility.
amount of play that will be on those fields, the concession stand is not listed up there for the high school fields.
Makes sense.
So is this an
I used to be a
opportunity
football
for the
mom,
district
so
to.
I know the contention between the midgets, and
That was kind of our discussion
so I just wondered.
brought up, and that money's, and I know Dawn was talking about it before when I walked in about
So if
banking all that kind of monies for future replacements. That way
the
you're already
district
paid for.
would want to control the refreshment stand at the baseball, softball field. Now, again, you're gonna have maybe some resistance from like baseball and softball during the season, they can operate it, but any outside
Yes.
event, tournament coming in, the district could operate that and secure.
Yeah, because I know for a fact, when Matt comes in with the baseball team, baseball's done, softball's done in-house.
Yes.
And, offering it to them, 9 times out of 10, they say no. And then, it just sits there empty. So
You're
it's-
right, and we're missing a good opportunity.
Else, I mean, it's an opportunity.
Real good
Let's see
opportunity.
if I can tease out what you just said. So let's say that there's a fundraiser for the softball team and they have like 5 games and they have the concession stand manned 4 out of those 5 times and they make money for their banquet, their awards, etc. But there's one time that's left over that could be used by another Gateway School District group like the chess club. In other words, they might want to have a banquet too. They don't get a crowd that comes to it, so they could leverage the crowd that comes to the football game, basketball game, softball game, something like that. And they staff it once and they get a couple $100 and now that's enough for their award ceremony, right?
And we probably start with, established booster groups that we know have run concession stands and would, and would want to, so that's probably where the pecking order goes. But certainly, yeah,
Sure.
if we didn't have anybody that was, interested in one of the booster groups, then we would move on to any other groups and we could, advertise in school and say, hey, or talk to
Does your
an
club want it?
advisor and say, do you want to come in and do that?
Right.
Or what they do sometimes, they might, if boys baseball can't get enough and girls softball can't get enough, they get both sides
Fine, sure.
combined. So chess club could work with the boys baseball if they don't have enough and, then split the proceeds. But there are times in the summertime when Matt's up here with 8 tournaments that go from
Yeah.
Thursday to Sunday.
4 days of 8 games a day.
Out there and there's no place to get a drink.
Right, and these people are from outside the area. They don't want to drive somewhere to get
Ohio,
it. They
West
want it
Virginia.
right there.
They're here to play ball.
Captive audiences.
There's a reason why water fountains are not installed at facilities like this because it allows the public to purchase water.
It's easy money. I've been up there with, with the head coach sometimes, just me and him were working it. And
Our Shoop used to go up and run it because the boosters
Yep.
wouldn't.
Can I ask, all right, with the cost of custodial staff to clean, and also if we use our Gateway Place, is that fixed into these rates or are they going to
No.
be separate? Okay.
No, those are add-ons.
All add-ons.
Okay.
And it's part of the agreement that a potential user or renter would be part of their contract. That would
Do
all
we
be
have
discussed.
that listed anywhere?
Yes, it's on there.
what about the site manager? What if we can't provide a site manager? Do we have somebody in mind that would be the 80% site manager, or you just do that per sport, per wherever it's at?
Well, we typically have a pool of people that operate as site managers for our events. And basically, we would, again, like we did with the booster clubs for concessions, we would start with that group and say, okay, we need a site manager for this baseball tournament or this soccer tournament, and are you available? And they know what's entailed, and they would be working with the facilities folks and with myself to make sure we had everything.
I know a lot of times we'd have these and we didn't have site managers,
That and security is always tough
right?
because of the lack of bodies we do have. They're not working these type events, and those are really some of the ones we need them at, but we just don't have enough bodies to do so.
Go to labor costs. Is the track not available to category C still?
The high school track,
Yep.
We don't typically rent the track. Most groups, we end up putting in A or B. We haven't had a lot of requests from people outside the area or outside of that we felt could be category
Been
A or B.
considered the stadium. That was, the track is part of the stadium, so that was the mindset in the past. But
Okay.
it should be, if we're going to open up the fields to it, yes, the track could be separately.
So if you hosted a music concert, then you certainly wouldn't want to get the hurdles out for the track. That's a different style of event, right?
Right, it just depends on what's being requested. And you don't want to have the stadium open if you're having a track meet type thing. So you got to look at each individual situation. You just can't carte blanche, say, okay, you get
The whole stadium.
You get the turf and you get the track at the same time. It's just not good business.
Well, I was just, maybe we should just put instead of not available, included with stadium. Like, it was just confusing, like why, for somebody who does not rent a stadium or a track.
Right, it would be.
Okay.
Who's, John, you might know, who's doing the track over at the junior high?
Who will be built, who we have earmarked for it?
Kind of track, we're not getting the same track we have up to high school.
No, that all gets torn off down to asphalt. Any asphalt repairs would be made, and it's
All-American?
no, it's AT&T Sports. Tony Cunningham, they've had the best numbers. They redid this track for us. It's
Softer?
it's a softer, but there's material that goes down and then the poured rubber goes over it. It's not what was up at the high school prior.
I know everybody loves the track at the junior high because when they walk or run on it.
Softer.
Yes.
And it's going to be very similar, almost identical to what we have up here.
Mr. Ritter, how's the track been performing up at the high school?
So I've been a track coach at the Gateway School District at the high school level for a couple of years now. And every year at the beginning of the season, we always have kids complain about shin splints. It's agony to walk on shin splints when you're on the track. We also have the weather plays into this. When it snows or it rains really hard, we have to work out indoors, so we run up and down the hallways or the gymnasium. So it's really, really hard, to run on those types of surfaces. So we upgraded the Gateway track this last season. We had no complaints about shin splints.
Good.
It is just nice and soft. Now the downside of that is a harder track is faster. You get a couple tenths of a second faster because you're running where it's less spongy. But the give and take of that is you're able to run if you don't have shin splints. So the kids really, really like the new track.
Good.
Just want to make sure that's.
Oh yeah, that was really. We were doing that track, the redo when all our conversations started. So that was.
A lot of homework done on that surface.
Yes,
as
there
well,
was. It was paramount in the talks about what we wanted. We knew the complaints and the problem with the old one.
So my compliments to Mr. Hall and Mr. Brown on behalf of the kids. They had fun this year on the track team. No complaints, no injuries.
And if we can get 10 years out of that.
Better.
Depends on the sunlight, radiation, all those things. It just, the weather plays into it, of course.
Oh, it does.
Do we have anything listed for the maintenance field at Mosside Middle?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, it's on here. It's called the MSMS Athletic Field below the maintenance garage. And we typically just charge the $25 rate that we charge for other grass fields.
Are we looking possibly in the future to do anything with that field?
Well, we looked at that in a couple different lights. The one would be, to turf that thing and turn it into a whole soccer lacrosse, complex. That would be the, sort of the big vision, the big dream. But I think a pretty neat consolation would be, if we could manage drainage a little bit, really look at, the landscape management of it and make it into a pristine grass field, because now, not to put it back on Bob, but we're not really maintaining many grass fields at the high school anymore. We could make, and I will tell you that soccer purists, would rather play on grass. I know that many do. Obviously, the Riverhounds play on turf, and we play on turf, and many teams we play on turf. And the turf we have now is supposed to mimic grass. So, I mean, it's a little better than it used to be on a carpet for the soccer people. But it really is, they still love grass. So if we could make, as an in-between, if that field could become a, sort of a crown jewel, one of the better grass fields around, then it could be, again, an attractive soccer field.
And do the field events, shot put and all that, prefer the grass?
That's the one back behind
No,
Moss
same
middle of the
one.
parking lot.
Right
I'm
now,
talking the ones with
it
stands.
is the
We throw on the
maintenance
maintenance field.
Right now, it is.
Okay.
Our intent was to relocate
Behind the school, yeah.
the throwing events to the backfield, but there would need to be a little bit of, we have the space, it just needs to be reworked in order to handle it.
And if
You
we
want to
made
move
that,
it to the backfield?
Well,
if we made that field, well, if we made the field that we're talking about into sort of a, the quality field that maybe would be rented in the spring as well, we might consider or if we turfed it, certainly, at some point, then we'd need another area to throw things like the javelin. And
I mean, do they, I guess, do they throw on turf or no? Throw
they
on
can't, they
grass?
certainly can't throw the javelin. I mean, there's a indoor rubber javelin that they train with and stuff, and they throw in, but they don't
No matter
compete with it.
what, we're gonna need grass somewhere.
somewhere.
Right.
The Jab still has a runway where they can, it's like a rubberized.
So I missed the first
Jab,
part.
Javelin, you have a like runway.
There is a runway for javelin. It's pretty long, actually, but depending on your sport and how you're set up, you could do a runway that is synthetic, whatever that product might be, and then the landing areas are dirt, grass. Shot put's much easier because it's limited in length, and they do those actually in gravel. And
We have a concrete area back here?
you have a concrete disc area, 10-foot concrete disc, but then the landing area is made out of pea gravel. So it lands and doesn't bounce or move, and it rakes smooth. So that's not hard. The discus and the javelin are the difficult ones because they take such a long amount of space.
That's something we gotta keep in mind.
And, and that's the
Well, that
thing
was the
too,
plan
just-
if we did that field to,
To go back behind.
build down those areas.
Because when it's the wet season,
Oh, yeah, and it's in the spring.
it's just plops.
If you look where the shot puts go, and it's dangerous for the people using the field, because those balls are heavy, they're completely plugged into the ground.
So if we can, I'm just gonna make a suggestion, if we can look at possibly with the drainage or something on that field. That's it.
You put a French drain in on the back one, right?
Yeah, and it handles quite a bit of it. Just depends on how the rains are coming. They pop up, just like the library field. You see that area's high. We had to pull the lawnmowers out of them because and it was never wet there previously. So they do just, happen.
So we don't have a line leaking.
Not 100% sure of that. The only line that's there is our main water line.
Goes from the garage right across
It
the
goes
road.
right down the middle of the road is where the main 10-inch water line is.
I was thinking the same thing back here,
Now that I checked.
leaking.
That we checked. That is actually groundwater. I actually had municipality test it. So,
Okay, a lot of information. I want to thank Mr. Hall and the work that he did to gather that information. We will have further conversation about this, but we would like to have this potentially on the agenda for August. That way we can have it in play for September, October, when the fields are done.
We can get it sooner.
Yeah.
Just for the public's input, the Gateway School Board's mandate is to approve policies and to open the door for administrative regulations. Those are two separate things. So the school board could create a policy or update its policies and then hand over the administration of those policies to the superintendent, the athletic director, the other directors that we have here in order to carry out those policies. So there's a stark separation between the two, and that's what we want to maintain. We want to give our staff members as much freedom to do what they know needs to get done and the resources to accomplish that successfully on behalf of the students, the staff, and the parents and the community. So it's a time check. It is now 5:51. We have another meeting following this. If we have no more discussion, we can close it. Sure. Let's.
I see a policy here on the tennis courts, but do we rent them? Am I not seeing it on the activity fee?
We actually, since I've been here, I've never had any outside group request them.
Okay.
You know, we work with Monroeville Rec and our people, but nobody's asked to rent them
Camps,
I've
like
been
our own people run a camp or, you
I
know.
just saw a policy, but I didn't see a
Yeah,
fee. And I'm like, wait, do we or don't we?
yeah, we should have that on there though. That's a good catch because we have it. If we don't rent it because no one asked, so be it. But it is a facility that we do have.
So
We could add that to an outside group. Why not? Yeah.
Just under the schedule or something.
what would the rental be on that?
50 an hour probably, something like that.
And so, of course, if the public has any suggestions on how we might best use the Gateway School District facilities to meet your needs, just get in touch with us here. Let us know what your proposal is and what the costs and benefits and nuances are so that we can do our best to meet your needs. So, Dr. Short, is it proper for us to now close the section of the meeting down and begin the new one? So, all in favor of closing this meeting down, say aye. Next, we have an athletic committee meeting for Wednesday, June. So, Micah, do you want to separate these into two separate groupings or continue recording?
I can do that. I'll stop it now.
Very good. So we're going to take